I'm with Autodesk related business for the past 18 years or so. Of course, I see a few known faces in the crowd, a few are new, but anyway. Because you have seen the description of this class in the website, it is meant for busy architects. So I see who is here, they're all extremely busy, isn't it? So I take it from that, yeah. So that's the main thing. The ultimate aim of this session is not to get into the extreme graphics guru stuff and push it to all those the limits and all. It's exactly what a busy architect wants. An architect could be, he should concentrate on his design aspects and not spend much time in fiddling around the software and all those stuff, you rush out for meetings, go and present them your design views and get it approved and all those stuff. So it's not only meant for architects, even it could be an MEP engineer, it could be someone from electrical or MEP or structural. Still he will have to do some visualizations in his early conceptual stage or design stage. So that's what I say, like we are looking at renderings which will go for 10 to 30 minutes or probably an hour or two. So this is what we call as, coffee time rendering and lunchtime renderings and overnight renderings which go on for a week. So there are various types of renderings. So we are talking about something really quick and decent. Yeah, that is the ultimate aim of this session. All right. So the types of renderings, you already know. The ones which you do during the design study has to be really, really quick and fast, Yeah. They are not meant to be really, really accurate and pretty, but it has to exactly convey the design idea to your clients. You go for frequent meetings, just quickly do some renderings, drop in a PowerPoint and then rush for the meeting. Or email someone, the image cannot be too huge that you have to send it via some external third-party links. Just emailable small file sizes. The next level is like for the marketing purpose where you need to sell the design, where you need to put some jazzy stuff in the image and for marketing purpose, where you have to slightly push the limit of your design study renderings to be more beautiful, attractive. There could be no trees in the site, but you have to force some trees and orangey background, sunsets and everything looks so beautiful. Yeah? So the final one is renderings for analysis, which has to be very physically accurate, metals and woods and carpets, and not only for architects, but that could be even for guys who are into CG, computer graphics, and guys who are working with Steven Spielberg and James Cameron. They fall in the third category. Yeah, extreme. So we are not looking at that. Today we are focusing on the very first one, the design study renderings, where you need to really do something quick and just go. If you have some more time, like today I have around 2 to 3 hours, or I have a second PC where I could push the renderings and relax, then fine, you can slowly push RevIT to the second level where you can produce some decent level images for even marketing. Okay, as you would have seen in the description in the VUX site, we know that 3D Studio Max is the king of all rendering products to do such kind of stuff. But then again, our concentration is on busy architects. Okay, so let us. The whole aim of this session is to do something within RevIT with what RevIT offers us. What is inside RevIT? Let's try to do without no plugins or nothing. I'm not going to export import. Just I have RevIT and I need to produce something decent. All right. Okay. So RevIT comes out with two types of renderers. One is called as NVIDIA Mental Ray renderer, and the second one is Autodesk Ray Tracer. The second one is the property of Autodesk. It's the own rendering engine of Autodesk. The first one belongs to NVIDIA. Right? Both are different in their technologies, the way they do the renderings. So majority of my section will go on the first one, which is the NVIDIA Mental Ray, but I will give you an insight into Ray Tracer also if you want to use it then and there. Ray Tracer is available only in 2016 versions. All right, it's a new feature. In 2015, you will see only the first one, NVIDIA. Now, before I proceed, okay, I have a model with me. I have a model with me. I'm not using a very huge model because I need to show something quick for you, but the logic applies to any huge model. Okay, you need to just catch up the logic of the renderings, what to do, how to tweak it. All right. Okay. Now here you go to the rendering dialog box. from your view render, and I mean most of you are already users of RevIT, isn't it? Might not be modelers, but a model is given to you, and you're going to check the model and view around it, but produce some views from it for your client meetings. But you do have other modelers in your office who will give you this file. Okay, so that's okay. So that's a rendering dialog box. It's just your one-stop solution. That's what I mean here. Okay, one-stop solution. There is no need to navigate to multiple n number of dialog boxes to tweak lots of settings. If you look at the look at products like 3D Studio Max and Maya, they are like extremely powerful software where you get lots of tweakings, you know. You go deep down inside and dig around lots of controls, and they are for people whose main profession is rendering. They might not be even modelers. You have, when you get into deep CG, you have various categories of profession. You know, one could be only a modeler, one could be a rigger, one could be only a lighting guy. He will not do a modeling at all. One could be just an animator. So it keeps on like this. So we are something from a different category, engineers and architects. So we simply have just one dialog box to look at. Quite simple, straightforward. That's the beauty of RevIT rendering. Okay. All you need to do is just take care of the 4 steps. It's quite simple and straightforward. So in this dialog box, if you see, by default I'm choosing the NVIDIA Mental Ray renderer. That's your default, okay, in case if you are not selecting that. Now once done, you need to just check out the first one, which is a quality. I'm going to talk a lot about this in the coming slides, and what you should select, how to tweak it and all. But quality, if you're looking at it, the very first one, okay, you have around 5 presets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 presets, and one custom for you. Okay, draft, low, medium, high, and best. So as a busy architect, there is no need for me to know about the behind the scenes of what is in there in the best and what is in that medium, and just I choose best, medium. So I could easily understand best is going to take the maximum rendering time, and draft is going to take the least. Yeah, quite simple and straightforward. That's it. But then I'm going to talk about that in detail in the coming slides. Once you select the quality, okay, here I am selecting medium. Then you select the output settings, you know, like screen or printer. Screen is something which is a resolution of my screen, but printer is something where you want to get it printed out. But most of the cases you want to put this image into a PowerPoint and do some presentations. And in some cases you want to print it out as well. So when you are going to print it, you need to take care of this area, which is called as the output settings. You select a particular DPI, dots per inch. Okay, I'll explain this coming back. That's step number 2. That's step number 2. All right. Select the rendering quality. Step number 2, select the resolution you want. Step number 3, select a lighting scheme. So we are looking at 2 major types of lighting schemes. One is exterior and one is interior. As simple as that. If it is interior, there are different cases, right? Only sunlight coming in, interior scene, or only the artificial lights are on. That's one case. Both sun and artificial is on. So you have 3 cases for interior, and the same 3 cases for exterior rendering. Exterior only, sun only, from night shot, artificial only from exterior, a combination of both, sun and light. So that's what you're going to do here. Step number 3, select a lighting scheme from this. So you might be thinking, what's the fun? And I mean, okay, I just select exterior, so what's going to happen? RevIT is going to do lots of things for you. The moment I tell RevIT it's an interior, sunlight only, in the background RevIT is going to do lots of stuff for you and save lots of your time. You need to concentrate only on these 4. This section at the bottom is the post-processing control. After the rendering, you want to do some tweakings, you go and do it there. All right. So a little bit of Photoshop work can be done within RevIT without even opening Photoshop. You will be surprised looking at what I'm going to show you in a short while. All right. Now, what you need to concentrate on, okay, I have a model. Okay. So when I talk about the 5 quality presets, of course, you understand draft is going to take the least time, and best is going, but you do have an option called as custom, which I will explain a little bit later if you want to go and tweak some settings on your own. All right. So depends upon your deadlines. You have a meeting in just 5 minutes, push to low, medium, high, best, and up, your wish. Now when it comes into output settings, this is what you need to be a little careful. DPI has nothing to do with the image quality you see on screen. It's for the printer. Okay. It's for the printer. How much dots per inch the printer is going to print. Okay, and the size of the image you are going to render, you need to concentrate, which I will show you live in the product. Like you want an A4 size rendering or A0 size rendering, what? These are going to heavily affect the rendering time. Smaller the size, lesser the DPI, faster the rendering. So DPI is always related to the printer, not your image on the screen. For example, if I'm going to show my client an image on a PowerPoint presentation on my screen, I really don't want to go for high DPIs. Low DPI is enough. So we will concentrate more on the quality of rendering than the size of the image. So having a huge A0 image with less detail and which doesn't look good is meaningless. Having a small A4 size image which is crisp and clear and beautiful lighting, that's what matters, isn't it? So that's what I say. So if you even look at the top model cameras, DSLR cameras, Nikon or Canon, have you noticed that even on mobile phones we are looking at 40 megapixels of images, right? You're looking at it. What is that 40 megapixels? Are they interpolated? Are they effective pixels? The consumer low-end cameras, which are quite cheap, are boasting of 36 plus megapixels. If you look at the top-notch professional cameras, which are costing you like $6,000, $10,000, whatever it is from Nikon and Canon, you're looking at a maximum of 12 megapixels or 16 megapixels. So what does that mean? You need to look at more of quality rather than the image size being really huge. So I'll talk about that in a short while. Simple and straightforward. 3 cases for exterior. Exterior sun only. You want to see both the sunlight and the lights inside the building. Probably an evening shot where you want the lights to be on inside the building. At the same time you want to see a little bit of sun and shadow. Then artificial only. Complete night rendering. Only the building lights are on. Then same set repeated for interior scene. As I told you, as you are going to select these options, RevIT is going to do lots of work in the background, adjusting exposure, switching on and off lights. For example, if you are having around 60 artificial interior luminas inside your building, the moment I say it's interior sun only, RevIT is going to automatically switch off all the lights you have placed inside the scene without you manually. Otherwise you'll have to do that. All right? Okay. I'll show you that. Now background, of course, you are free to choose from these options: sky, few clouds, cloudy, very cloudy, or go for a simple color. It could be light blue or an orangey color. All right? Okay. Now, okay, that's it. Simply 4 steps. Select the resolution, select the lighting scheme, and just hit the render button. Let us try to do that. So I have a scene here. I will set it to medium. Okay. Now carefully watch. For this class purpose, I'm not going to really pump in the image size or DPI. Most of the cases for even print 150 DPI is more than sufficient. No need to really get into 300 or 600, because we are not going to do renderings for billboards, right? No, not really. So 150 is quite a decent one. But if you are going to drop in small images to beautify some PowerPoint presentation for the client, even 75 will do. For print, 150. So once you do that, you will keep an eye on the resulting file size in MB, which is there, and also the size of your image, which is 1700 by 1200 pixels approximately. This is where the digital cameras, now you understood the concept of what is this digital cameras when they say 16 megapixel cameras and 12 megapixel cameras. So, and every camera will also have a DPI value. When you're going to purchase a DSLR, not only don't check megapixels and its features, you will have a feature called as DPI. Go and check what's the DPI of that camera. Sometimes it could be an arbitrary value, because that is what when you print that particular stuff. All right. Okay. So keep in mind 150 is a good value. Now this is going to be huge to do some renderings in front of you. So I'm just going for a printer, and I will just I will use screen most of the time. All right, because I'm doing the renderings not to print, to just show you what RevIT does. So I want it fast, so I'm just leaving you to screen. That takes up my current screen resolution. What's the width of my, so if I change my screen resolution, this size is going to change. Steps, which I told you just now, I'm going to hit the render button and I just wait. And let's see what's going to happen. So, okay. Hold on for a second. So see, normally if you're looking at professional renderers, they are going to shoot renderings for the whole day, and some of the renderings which we do for projects will go on for days. Have you seen that back in your office when you talk to your 3D Studio Max guys? One machine will keep on rendering for 2-3 days to produce that effect. Now I'm doing something in front of you in a few minutes. That's the rendering I want. So let's see. The resulting image, as I could foresee, is a little bit cool. It's too bluish. The exposure is very low. You know, it's absolutely, it's not pleasant. But let's wait for Mental Ray to finish the rendering, and you can keep an eye on the timing it takes. So I will remove this close dialog box when rendering is complete, so that we can have a look at the time RevIT uses, all right, for the rendering. So I'm talking about, look at that, I'm talking about 2 minutes of rendering or 1.5 minutes of rendering. Super fast, isn't it, compared to the actual renderings? Okay, now this stuff is not good because exposure issue, bright, dark, dull image. So immediately, what if I am a newbie to rendering, immediately I will think about, okay, let me go back to my sun setting and pump up the values of the lighting. Let me go back and place some extra lights around the building. Something, I want the building to brighten up now. This is my only aim, isn't it? But wait, so that's what I'm talking about here. So what's next? I did the 4 steps, I hit the render button, and that's what RevIT gave me. Now these are all the stuff which I'm looking at. Even you might face lots of issues, you know, the image too cool. Sometimes right at the outset you will get the perfect image if everything is right. I'm not saying that RevIT is going to do this always. Okay, this is done on purpose to show you how a super fast post-processing can be done. So should we go back to the model, readjust the lighting and do the rendering again? Not required. You have some super fast post-processing in RevIT. All right, let's see. Now I'll close that. Okay, now I'm going for the post-processing section. Do you remember that in the first slide I showed you? After the rendering, you have to do this. These items have no effect before the rendering. So when I click on that post-processing, adjust exposure, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 controls. That's it. That's it. RevIT is quite simple. All predefined sets, 6 controls. So you do have something called as exposure value, you have something called as highlight. Exposure value is the overall exposure of the scene. Highlights is if you have any lost highlights, too bright in one area, you can retrieve the detail from that area. Same time, if you lost the details in shadows, one area is pitch black, you can slightly adjust the shadows towards lighter or darker. I mean, okay, it's all a slider value. Okay, now whatever I'm going to do here, I could apply and immediately see the feedback on the screen. That's the beauty. So let me slightly boost up the exposure from dark to this. This is the same thing which you find in DSLR cameras also. You can underexpose, overexpose and short, right? Sometimes we take +3 to -3, 6 exposure shots and combine it for HDRA. So lots of things happen. It's almost the same exposure stuff. So once I slightly increase that and hit apply, look at that. A mild tweaking, it's exposing. Now still contrast is less, it's more bluish. So and a warm image is always good for your eyes. So I'm going to get into this white point, and from cool I'm going to slightly move the mouse to warmer. You can play around. I mean, it's arbitrary. I'm just eyeballing my image. DSLR, which is costly DSLR. So overnight I become an excellent photographer because I own a DSLR? No. So if that's that, everyone can buy a DSLR and say call ourselves as the best photographer in the world. No, because there are lots of tweakings. Every shot, every corner you point the camera at has its own exposure values. You know, how you take a shot at. So this is what. So, but here, the beauty of RevIT is once you finish off the rendering, these post-processings are. I'm not telling that the image you are looking at the screen is superb or beautiful. No, it's still, you know, okay kind of an image, but my main aim is to give you the logic of post-processing, what you can do with your images, okay? Finally, I'm going to show you some images which were rendered only in RevIT, but then they were rendered for an hour or half an hour or something. So this is something which happened in 1 minute 30 seconds in front of your eyes. So okay, so play around with that slightly. So post processing down and you slide left and right and you're not achieving the image because the difference is between 0.1 and 0.2. Look at this, like it is 11.42. They're very minute values. So play around with small values to achieve what you want. So if you keep on dragging left and right, you will not get what you need. So go by smaller values, increase 0.1, 12.5, 12.6, 12.7. Okay, now another good idea is, as you start tweaking these values, this happens with everyone, even an experienced renderer. As I start tweaking around exposure values, actually the exposure value in my, the way the image looks in my laptop on the screen is slightly different, because I'm IP value. For example, once someone is wearing a white shirt, the human brain registers it as white. That's it. Wherever you sit, that's a white shirt for me. But actually, in this lighting, it could be an yellow shirt if I render the scene, isn't it? But my human brain, it's white. So that's what you need to compare images and see. So how I could do that? Okay, whatever I have done now, I just say okay, and here in the render dialog box, I have an option called a save to project. All right. Now, by any chance, even if you close this dialog box, you will, let's say by mistake you close the rendering dialog box and I'm in a panic, oh my god, my rendering is gone, should I redo that again? Nothing to worry, you go back to the render dialog box, and if you click show the rendering, the previous rendering is still in the buffer. It's not cleared. Anytime you can switch back between show the model and show the render to see what's happening. Now save to the project and give it meaningful names, like probably the settings you used, like don't give names like my rendering, my latest rendering, my new, so you have lots of new. So even some of the MP3s which is saved in 2002 is still latest MP3s and new MP3s, So always give meaningful names. So I for example, here I say just A. For the class purpose, I don't want to type long names. I just say A. Okay. Now where does this go and sit? You have the renderings section in your project browser. So you double click this, the image is sitting there. That's an image. Okay. Okay, now let us go for doing some more tweakings. Okay, I'll just style that window. So that's the image, and that's the actual camera view. Right? So I'll close the image. So let us go and do some more post-processing, because rendering is done. Now I can play around with as many as post-processing I want. Let me try one more post-processing, where I want the image to be little bit more exposed. Getting the point? So now once you are satisfied, you select the best one, go back and delete. Now okay, I'm okay with B, I can just go back to A and kill it, which I really don't want. You can remove it or delete it, so it will go off. So you settle with one. All right. So always compare images. In one view, if you keep on tweaking, you will get lost. You will not know where you are going to reach. No idea. Probably you will think, oh my god, half an hour back I did a setting that was good. Now I messed up. So how do I go back to that setting? So do tweakings, save. Do tweakings, save, and compare which one is good. Okay. Now. And this one, actually I'm always going to render, in the class I'm going to render to very low settings, okay, because I need to show you things fast. So I'm not going to shoot high rendering, but actually if I push this rendering for half an hour in the best settings, it's going to look really beautiful. It's looking very, very, a low quality rendering because I did in 1.5 minutes. All right, so that's what the whole trick is about. Post-processing, don't underestimate it, all right? So if you go back to the rendering dialog box, okay, that's an image. Sometimes, okay, so if you go back, the last section is completely post-processing, this area below the image, all right? Sometimes what happens, because I used to sit and fiddle around and do lots of research, sometimes if I go and tweak the draft setting a little bit in a particular model, the resulting image was better than the best mode, really. Why I am telling that you should always try out that custom and tweak certain settings also. Certain things might be unwanted. Let's say I'm going to render an interior scene where there are no reflective objects at all. Or let's say 1 or 2 reflective objects which are far away in the room corners. So if you go for best, it is going to have a high reflection settings. These objects are going to reflect each other, keeping on reflecting. You keep 2 reflective glasses or mirrors opposite each other, it's going to be infinite number of inter-reflections, which is going to take lots of rendering time, and you have to just wait. What you want to see is the room lit nicely, but RevIT is spending its time in just rendering that portion. So I might go for draft, push up other values and slightly reduce it. So you need to learn a little bit of tweaking. Best is not always the best comparatively, but if you have no time to research and I have to just rush, there's a meeting half an hour, okay, just click on best, render it and just drive away. So that's one option. But if you have a little bit of time, a day or a couple of days to submit the renderings for the client meeting, spend some time in tweaking it. So we are going to talk about tweakings. That's called as custom. Okay. Now, to start with, you need to start with any one of the presets. You need to copy draft and then tweak it, or you need to copy medium and then tweak it. It's all one and the same. Why this is a good idea? You want to push the default medium setting a little bit more. So just copy medium and start from there. There is no need for you to start from draft. You are getting the point? Explode what is this shutter speed and what is this f-stops. So just leave the camera to automatic. That's what we did so far. Now we are coming out of that. I'm telling RevIT I'm getting into the manual mode and I will tweak what I want. Okay. Now you have 4 categories in this tweaking dialog box. If you scroll it up and down, there is a general set option, which is just one setting. Then you have few settings related to reflection and transparency. As you scroll down, you have one shadow option. Then you have a few settings related to indirect illumination. That's it. So 4 categories. General setting is just one setting called as anti-aliasing. You know what is anti-aliasing? After rendering, you just zoom a little bit close to the image. You see the jagged edges. You could see right on the screen. Can you see? It's heavily jagged. See the edges? Can you see the zigzag edge along that? Okay. So you want to just avoid those anti. This considerably increases the rendering time. Okay. But anyway, if you want to see learn what these other settings are doing, just go to medium, high, best, and see the default setting what Autodesk is suggesting. You will understand. But anyway, let me go for edit again, and I could slightly pump up this image anti-aliasing a little bit. So it's now in 6, maybe. Which one did I copy? Okay. It's going to take lots of time. So I'm going to copy probably low. Okay. And then copy to custom. See, the low setting is just 2, which is a very low anti-aliasing value. So I will slightly pump it up to 4. And let's do a quick rendering and see whether it is improving the anti-aliasing or not. It's not the best setting, but you are just settling down for some value. After this session, I'm also going to give you some tips on how to speed up your renderings, certain rules to follow. Yeah. Here I'm rendering the whole image. If I'm really intelligent and want to conserve time, I would have rendered only one portion of the building, isn't it? To see the, okay, but this is fine. Anyway, this rendering is going to happen in a few seconds, so that's okay. But in case of large settings, if you have any specific doubt how that portion is going to look, render only that portion. I will talk about that in a short time. Can you see that the edges are slightly improving? So this is like something which I fine-tuned. Just because, so now the setting is low. But which setting did I copy? Low. So just for this anti-aliasing to look better, if I just select medium or best, I'm going to wait for more than 10 minutes for the rendering to complete. Because I'm okay with the rendering. Only I had an issue with the jagged edges. So I just copied low and slightly pushed only that value. So look at this is where you need to behave very intelligently. Getting the idea? So this is why they have given you custom tweakings, copy low. So really I don't want best now. I'm okay with low. But my only issue is slightly increase the jagged edges. That's it. So similarly, you can do it for others also. So what are the actual controls? Let's go and see. Simple, interesting stuff. What the architects exactly needs. If I'm looking at the dialog boxes of Maya and Render, I need to be really an expert. Lots of dialog boxes and tweakings, and you have to keep on learning this. This is something very simple. You don't know what's happening behind the scene. You are given simply switches. Just increase that, the volume increases, decrease it decreases. That's it. That's what an architect wants, and the image is quite pleasant. That's it. Yeah? So this is what I just did now. Then if you go to the reflection and transparency category, think about this only if you have heavy reflective objects like chrome finishes and aluminum, glasses. So you have maximum number of reflections. You know what maximum number of reflection is? You need to be very careful. If you are placing 2 reflective objects or mirror opposite to each other, what's the tree depth you want to go? This mirror keeps on reflecting each other to infinity. Okay, so unnecessarily your rendering time will go up. So leave it to 2 or 3. So check it out. It's situational. If your camera is very close to a reflective object and the client's eye is going to be pulled towards that, pump up this value a little bit. But if there are some reflective images far away and it has to be just reflective, it's not to be precise, just keep it very low. This will drastically increase in the rendering time. Okay, so that's what is here. When you go to the edit, maximum number of reflections, 2 is more than enough. If you forgot what's happening, look at that small icons on the left and right side. This is before, this is after. You see that small sphere and the cube. it gives you in a nutshell what's going to happen if you drag that value all the way to the right. But again, be careful. Out of enthusiasm, if I drag all this to the right, thinking that I'm going to get the best rendering in the world, with reflection setting it to 100, I will be resulting in the same image. Where RevIT behind, in the backyard, there is going to be some reflective, and RevIT will spend its time in rendering that reflection, and it's going to be useless in this view. So always be conservative. 2 is more than enough. Right. Now the next setting is maximum number of refractions. Refraction is seeing through. Okay. Now if you have two surfaces like 1, 2, if I want to see through this glass as well, then keep on increasing it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Probably if you have glasses of 2 faces, you need refraction of 2 maximum. That's it. So that you can see through the curtain wall outside. If you set it to 1 in RevIT, your curtain walls will become opaque. Many people complain, may I render and my curtain wall glass is opaque, I couldn't see outside. The reason being your refraction setting is less than 2. Because it's true, sometimes curtain wall slides and opens, you are looking at 4 glasses overlapping. So at least you need to have your refraction set to 4. So refraction is opposite to refraction, you are seeing through. So that is one value. Again, if you try to pump this up, it keeps on going, which is unwanted. Look at that, 97, 98. I don't have transparent objects one after the other, 97 glasses or curtain walls stacked against one another. No way, not at all required. So keep it. I think 4 is a good value. I'm going to give you some ideas about the good values, but there is no general setting which I can say this is the best setting in RevIT. Depending upon your view, depending upon your model, situations, you will have to keep on tweaking this, but quite simple to tweak. Second thing is like blurred reflections. Like once like can you see the image of the sphere on the box? Once the reflection is false, so that blurred reflection, what's the precision of this? It has to look dull or nice and beautiful. Just pump up the value. But then again, 2, 3 is a good value. Blurred refractions. Again, once I'm seeing an object through this, so how precise the bottle has to be seen through the glass. As simple as that. Okay. Another setting is like, so these settings can be, you can, if you have enough time, you can do a study with the same image by altering these values. But I will give you an average setting, but based on the time you have in hand, okay, you have 2 days to submit this image for the client meeting tomorrow, then play around with high values. No, you have another 1 hour or 2 hours of time, then be conservative. This is what you need to do. Now, one more setting is there for shadow options. In case if you enable soft shadows, you're going to get nice soft shadows across the corners where the wall meets the slab. If not, you're going to get the sharp sun shadows alone. Okay, that's just one setting. You enable soft shadows or not. For interior scenes, yes, you have to. Soft shadows are a must. The soft shadows under the table in interior scenes, even for exterior scenes. Once you enable it, what is its precision? Alright, okay, the maximum goes up to 10, and so circle patterns. So how to improve that? That one value is very important. The another way is to improve the lighting inside your room so that the blotches will go away. I'm going to talk about it in a short time. So you have just 3 controls for the indirect illumination. Specify the bounces you want first, 1 or 2 or 3. Don't go more than 4, not at all required. Because always remember, to increase the brightness or the exposure of your scene, what will you do? Will you go for 6 bounces and wait for 1.5 hours, or will you go for 2 bounces and slightly adjust the exposure in the post-processing? Which one is the most intelligent way? Think about it. Yeah, think about it. If you have time, enough time to allow RevIT to render, you're fine. You go for more bounces. No, I have little time. Then think about keeping this bounces low, and always remember post-processing. Never forget. Anytime you render, always remember I have post-processing. I have post-processing. Some mistake you did, you are waiting for half an hour and the resulting image is, something is not right. Don't worry, just quickly go to the post-processing and see if those tweakings are helping you. You have saturation control, you have exposure control, you have everything is there. Midtones, highlights and shadows. Even if that fails, you tried your level best, something is happening, then okay, come back and re-render, that's fine. But in 95% of the cases, the post-processing will help you. I showed you a small example, right? Within seconds, by sliding 2 sliders, exposure and the warm, from cool to warm, change the whole scene upside down. All right, that's it. So I'm going to talk about this in the coming up thing. Okay, so keep always in mind pumping up all the custom values to the rightmost value is not going to give you the best image in the world. Sometimes it's totally unnecessary. The best example is reflection. Inside a scene, why you want to slide the reflection, number of reflections all the way to the right side and wait for RevIT to calculate reflections, because my concentration on the overall lighting of the room. To some extent, reflection needs to be there. Okay, so you need to be conservative in that case. Exposure values and all those render settings, the type of lighting scheme you select, exterior, day or night. For example, look at this. I'm going to another view, which is an exterior night rendering. Okay, now when I go to the rendering dialog box and you see the default scheme is exterior artificial only. Can you see that? Okay, now I'm going to open another view, which is interior daylight. So when I go for rendering dialog box, can you see it's interior sun only? So whatever settings you do in the rendering dialog box on a per camera view basis is remembered by RevIT. It's good, so that you don't want to start from scratch again. Once you change the views, if everything reverts back to default, then again it's a waste of time. This is a good thing. It remembers everything. That's beautiful. Okay, let's proceed further. Saving rendering time. Okay, now whatever I have explained to you so far, I did with a small model which did not look jazzy or beautiful. Don't mind. If you take this logic, go back to your office and apply this on any huge project and go for the best or higher and see the type of renderings you achieve with RevIT. If I have time at the end of the class, we can play around and shoot some renderings and see live how it is going to happen. But I don't want to really waste my time in putting the screen for rendering, and because I want to give you the maximum before you leave this room. So always use region rendering to test specific areas. All right, look at this. Now I am going to do a rendering. Now the setting is like interior sun only. It's fine. I want to just see this bottom portion of this chair and sofa, the table and sofa, how it's going to look. So I'm not going to waste my time. I say region. Then the moment you click on region, you get a small red square inside RevIT. Okay. Now click on that and slightly adjust the cropping to the specific area only where you want to test. Okay. Sometimes you may change the material and you want to render and see how this material is going to look. Don't render the whole scene. Where you have changed, put a region there and check that. So the rendering time is going to be really, really fast. So I go for a medium rendering, interior sun only, and just shoot the rendering and see. So I have set it to medium. So okay, so I can understand. Okay, I'm okay with the shadows. Now I know that I need to slightly play around with the exposures. Did you look at the speed of the rendering? RevIT is not spending its time to shoot the whole scene, just the specific areas. Now once you are done, come back, remove the region and go back and tweak. So region by region. Once you are satisfied, now once you start rendering your overall scene, again don't set it to medium. Start with the draft always. Always. Your image is going to look bad, understood. But major stuff which you miss, like for example, the light controls or some material, something you will identify in this scene, isn't it? Is it good rather than waiting for 1.5 hours to see the rendering and find out a mistake? It's better to look at this draft view, right? Of course it's bad, really, really bad. I agree. External lights here, if you want to see that in a 3D view. There are lots of interior ceiling lights. Can you see that? Linear lights there, and then lots of lights outside, etc., etc. Okay. Now, when I am going for a scene which is interior daylight, purposely I am going to render this, and I am going to choose the scheme interior artificial only. For example, so I want to shoot this scene. Of course, there is only one light. It's not going to be that bright. We'll tune it later. So I'm going for a medium. This is the only light in the room. Okay, now when I shoot the render button, carefully watch the dialog box. RevIT is telling me and giving me an information, 21 artificial lights are being calculated in the background. Can you see that? But my current scene has only one. So there are two ways to avoid this. One, you go back to the lighting dialog box and start switching off the lights other than the one which is in the bedroom, in the living room. Or you don't have time to go and check which light is where, and of course it could be handled by creating lighting groups, but then simply the section box would be the best answer, super fast. RevIT will calculate, do the mathematics only for the stuff inside the section box. Alright, okay, now I'll just stop this because my aim is not to do the rendering. My aim was to show you to keep an eye there. In here it says 21 where that allowed me. So I'm going to close this. Show the model back. Now Making this section box might take a little bit of time, and you need to spend some 5 minutes more, but it's worth the time. If you spend 5 minutes in making this section box properly, you might save hours of rendering time, particularly when you put it in the best format. So, okay, how to do that? Now, this is the view where I want to apply the section box. So, I will go to the Properties Manager window. I will just, under the extents, I'll just enable section box. So, once I do that, you can see a big section box is showing up. But it's very difficult to adjust the section box in the camera view itself, isn't it? You don't know where you are dragging. That's a section box. I can select that and you get all the arrowheads. But this is going to be arbitrary because I don't know what is it. So the best way is to tile your views, close the unwanted views. Let me start with the plan level or level 2. Level 1 is where, yeah, this is the area I'm rendering, right? The camera is here. Okay, so I'll just tile the views. First, let me work out on the plan. The trick is to select the section box in the camera view. The moment I do that and then come back to the plan view, can you see the section box is visible here? But if you click outside, it's gone. It's a temporary display. So select the section box here, come back, just drag it out. I mean, I'm not going to be precise here, but at least to show you. But you need, when you do it, be a little bit precise. You know, sometimes you might exclude something which is very important in the scene, a handrail which is seen far beyond, or something will get cut off. So be a little bit precise. So first adjust it in the plan, exactly the area which you want to see. See, if I go to extreme levels, see, can you see that I'm going to extreme levels and cutting the slab there. So I need to play around safe, little bit, optimize it. Now once that is done, let me go back to one of the section views or one of the, see, this much portion under this slab is not at all required. So any lights from the ground floor will be immediately excluded by RevIT. And then drag this from the top. Now I need to be really careful because my camera is actually looking at that railing, because my perspective view is showing that railing there. So if I do that, for example, if I'm going to pull out that little bit, can you see the railing getting cut off? Okay. Or even if I do that, the railing gets cut off. So be a little bit. So you need to eyeball it around and check the perspective, what you want exactly. So this took me maybe 2 minutes, but worth the time. But let's go back to the same view. Let the section box be there, it's not going to show up. Okay, now when I go for rendering, I'll just shoot the rendering. Now check out the number of artificial lights. Can you see that? Number of artificial lights, that's 1. So you are saving a huge amount of time. If you are going to put, particularly this is very useful when you are going to shoot the rendering in the best conditions, in the best mode, or all the values pumped up. So a rendering which is supposed to happen in 1 hour might take 6 hours, you know. So by this, just by applying a section box, you could drastically reduce the rendering time. The dots on the ceiling is because of the luminaire, because that's designed that way. So of course you can go for post-processing, of course, by adjusting exposure slightly, make it high and make it a little bit more warmer. That's it. Yeah, so that's something which I did in few seconds. I mean, few seconds. It looks like some kind of an interactive rendering, but imagine if I can give RevIT half an hour to render the scene, it's going to give me beautiful exposures. Okay, keep that in mind. But you have all the values to play around. The another tip is unload unwanted link files. Sometimes when the RevIT file comes to you, there will be lots of links. Sometimes the MEP will be linked in, or structure. If you are going to do an architectural visualization, you can unload that links. You know, how do you do that? You know, as a RevIT user, right? You go to the insert button and manage links, and if you find any links here, RevIT links, just unload it. Unload it, don't remove it, because you might want it back. So always unload it, do the rendering and come back. This will save lots of rendering time. Hide unnecessary model elements. Sometimes your design content, you want to show the customer about the space. So unwanted furnitures and entourages, you can skip it at the moment. So because one plant kept inside this room is calculating the shadows for each and every leaf, you know, it's going to take time. Just switch off unwanted elements, anything. If you are not concentrating on the furniture layout, you want to transfer your design idea about the space to the client, just kick off and hide everything. So that's going to save lots of rendering time. Change the detail level if required. There is no need for you to do early conceptual design renderings in a high level detail, you know, where to control this detail. Here it is. Keep it in coarse, so that if you go to fine, every fine mullions and details, the curtain walls, everything is going to show up, and the shadows for each and every bits and pieces of this fine stuff are going to get calculated. So RevIT is going to shoot up the rendering time. So if you feel that it's really not required, always leave it to coarse or medium. No need to be fine. So think about it. These are very, very important tips. Region, using a region to test specific areas, then using a section box, remove unwanted links, model elements, hide it before you render unwanted stuff, change the detail level if required. If you want to really show a high level rendering, yes, go for it, but if it's not required, like I want to show that there is a door, I don't want to show the hinges and all those stuff at this stage of early design, just go for low level. Switch off unwanted lights. It not only saves electricity, it saves rendering time. Switching off could be very difficult for you. So what's the best way? Section box. How do you switch off? In case if you want to switch off, you don't have time for section box, you want to just go and say, hey, this light, switch it off. So once you select this artificial only scheme, it has to be, the scheme should be any one of the artificial schemes. You have this artificial lights button. When you click this, it will list out all the lights inside your scene. You can simply go and switch on and off the lights. Now, the second question comes up, oh my God, that's lots of light there, around 1,500 lights. How I'm going to, so you think about it, you can plan, you can group the lights, bedroom lights, living room lights, corridor lights. So if I go and give a uncheck there, all the bedroom lights are going to get switched off. So always think about grouping your lights before you start rendering. You know what? Once you're into the bedroom, you can go and quickly switch off the corridor lights and render. Otherwise, sometimes what happens, your section box is not perfect, you know. You have nailed down exactly the bedroom, okay, some corridor is coming up there, so you are not able to move the section box further because you are going to miss out some nice furniture placed in the corridor which your camera is looking at. Just because of that, all the lights in the corridor are going to show up. So if you can assess this dialog box and switch off the specific lights, it's much better at times. So keep in mind both are required, section box as well as switching off unwanted lights. Now, avoid adjusting the render quality settings higher than as I told you. No need to really pump up all the values. Be very conservative. If you do an eyeballing and gradually proceed, like you're not unsatisfactory, okay, push up the values and keep proceeding, because each rendering is not going to take more than 5-10 minutes, so it's still okay. Now, consider a low resolution and high image precision. That's what I said. Now for example, if I'm going for a paper size here, this printing paper size for high, you know, A3 or A0, and I'm setting a high DPI, okay, which is 300 or 600, but then inside my custom settings, if my settings and precisions are low, there is no use of having that big image in an A1 or A3 or useless, isn't it? It's like full of unwanted megapixels inside a scene, isn't it? So if you're going for a presentation, you want to drop an image in the PowerPoint, keep this image size in diet, you know, keep it with smaller widths and heights, but concentrate more on improving the quality. But probably you can keep this low and the resolution, the DPI to 150, but then go back to the settings and slightly improve the anti-aliasing, you know, so to make it more sharper. You know, the old Leica 2 megapixel camera is still unbeatable compared to the 40 megapixels you have on your phones, smartphones. Absolutely, yes. Because that 2 megapixel is worth of clarity, information and precision. It's not, of course, it's not a huge picture. 2 megapixel is a short image, but crisp and clear. It conveys it. Rather than having a huge picture of no information and no detail. So think about that. Think about that. So you need to always have a balance. Are you going to print? Are you going to present? If I'm going to present, what's the size of the screen? So can I go for an A4 size rendering or A3? It's going to affect. So for example, a 2" by 2" rendering with a DPI of 150, you're going to have 300 pixels in that image. This is how the pixels are calculated in normally in all the. So think about it. So that's something really you should consider it. Okay, low resolution, go for high image resolution. Okay, 2 MP is okay, 5 megapixel is okay. Actually, let's say you're owning a digital DSLR which can go up to 36, 40 megapixel of capacity, but you're going to print it on an A4. For an A4 size print, 6 megapixel is more than enough. But 6 megapixels of quality. You're getting the point? But if your requirement is you want to print to larger sizes, I'm in that profession, and then of course megapixels come into action. Most of your prints are going to be A4. Then why you really need those 21, 30, 40 megapixels? Not required. But from a professional point of view, you can use it for cropping. Let's say I'm very weak in framing, I just shoot and then come back and use a post-processing software to cut the portions. So that's one way to tackle that. But other uses are there. But for quality, you need to concentrate on render quality settings rather than the image size. Now, that's what I have repeated here. Appropriate image size and DPI is very important. Sometimes you might miss it out. You know, the image size is very low, but you spend half an hour of rendering and then you are coming and zooming in, it's pixelated. So always concentrate. So everything has to match. Decide your paper size. You remember how do you decide your paper size? You select that border of your camera view, size crop, specify your size. You can have it any arbitrary sizes, width and height, or you want to have a proportional scaling. That could be also done. Okay, most of the cases I do proportional scaling so that I fit one side to one side of the A4, the other side is as it is, okay, if I want to print. So these are something really, really important. If you follow just these points, you will see a considerable amount of speed in your rendering times. Okay, like you're talking about more than 60% of your rendering time being saved. So you keep proceeding. Another thing is your machine also plays an important role. Whatever settings we do, whatever we take, finally the boss who rules is the machine in which you are entering. If he is using a CPU value of less than 80, 70, you need to get a warning that your system resources are used by something else. When I am rendering, I want my full machine's power to be utilized for that rendering. So close everything, web pages, flashes, maximum whatever you want to close it and kill it. Leave the full power to this OOP render. Okay? Quickly open the task manager and see whether this OOP render is getting, actually this is the process name. If you go for the details, the full name is FBX OOP render 6.exe. Alright? Fine, so that's the case. Now I'm going to stop this rendering now. That is just to show you the process of what's happening there. So turn off any screensavers, close web pages, okay? 99% absolutely, because your RevIT is already open. So this guy cannot get 99%. At least you should take it that, it's not drastically down. Probably you're simply a Photoshop or some other web pages running, flashes is running, just close it off. That's something very important. Second thing is like plan the placements of lighting properly to save lots of time. Rather than rendering, your lighting is not good. For example, you want a very even lighting on your facade. Okay. After the rendering, you will find some hot spots and lost highlights. So just plan it perfectly. Always try to use IES lighting. When you go for Autodesk Seek, a website, you will get real-world luminous by Philips, Lithonia, Ergo. All these real-world luminous. You know what is a luminaire? Luminaire is a combination of light and a geometry. Okay, light is a light source, spot, linear, etc., etc. Geometry is something which is done by the manufacturer. So they might give you the family files, the actual Philips luminaire family, where you can direct and you can request for them. So always use lights with IES lighting. Now, how do you check that? Let's say, for example, there is a light here. So if I try to edit this family, that's a light family. So if I go to the light source, I'm not sure. Okay, or I could actually open up one family which I just downloaded from the seek.com. So if you go to the light source here, if you go to the properties, there's cross check. I mean, you will not be doing or creating this lighting families. I'm just showing you. As you scroll down in the family, if you look at the photometric web file, this light is using a photometric web file, which is an IES file, Illumination Engineer Society file. If you want to create your own light families, what you can do, you can request for this IES file from the manufacturers. You are sure that you are going to use these kind of lights inside your design, you can write to the manufacturers and say, I'm using these models from your company, please give me the IES file. So you can attach those IES files in your lighting family, which will emit the exact photometric web distribution, rather than a simple spotlight, or a simple omni-light glowing. You have a proper photometric web distribution of how the light will glow. So any light family you create, it's good to have the photometric web file. Even in this project, if I go to the 3D view, even there are some linear lights somewhere else on the top. So if I try to go and edit this particular family, so that's a light source. Okay, you click on that light source and go for editing. It could be of any type. It could be point, linear, square, cylindrical, whatever it is. Here, this particular light is not using photometric light distribution. It is using a hemispherical light distribution. This is your photometric. This should be enabled. If you are creating your own light families, this should be enabled. Say OK, and then go back to the properties. Then you have to assign a proper photometric web file here by selecting it from the list. You can Google around for IES files. Lots of manufacturers are giving it. It's a very small file. Look at the file size, 2 KB, 1 KB. Small information. And there are also third-party plugins in the market where you can create your own IES file by drawing the web diagram. You can create your own distribution. It's quite complex, but they are all free tools. Google for it. So keep in mind, try to use maximum lights which have a photometric web so that you get a proper light distribution. Otherwise, you are going to get one blotchy hotspot. Are you getting that? It's not having a photometric distribution. You are just pointing some harsh lights and you get some lost highlights and blown up areas which doesn't give you a pleasant look. So always IES lighting, try to use that. Okay, and proper placement. Look at the placement of the lights from there pointing towards there. Do real world placements. Even if you look at the projects which I have opened, you can see that on the exterior you have lots of lights. You see the placement of that light pointing towards the wall. So in case if I want to do a night rendering quickly, say for example, let me go for this exterior night. So everything is set there. Okay, my view is gone. Yeah, that's okay. And slightly, the camera view is gone. Okay, that's fine. I'll try to render that view. So if I go for rendering, I go for a scheme, exterior, artificial only. So it's going to switch off the sun automatically. I'm with only light. So I'll go for a medium quality just to show you. So everything is fine. Sky, few clouds doesn't matter anyway. Or you can say no clouds at all. It's going to be black. That's fine. I'll just shoot the run. Let's see how much time it's going to take. There are 21 lights. Medium setting, the predefined medium, copy it. That should help you. But this is not the best. If you have time, I will always suggest illumination smoothness. Push it further beyond 4. No issues. But this is just a suggestion. If you have no idea, I want time is short, but at the same time on quality also, after doing lots of trial and errors with a sample file, these settings are quite favorable. But please always feel free to increase these values. If you have time, if you have a good mission. If a mission can handle it, why not? Isn't it? If my mission can really render fast, you can pump up the values, it's okay. So illumination smoothness is a value which should be really high because that plays an important role in removing the blotchiness of your screen. Okay. So let us go back and see. Okay. And it's very dark, isn't it? It's looking some kind of okay. Of course. Now particularly when you render interior scenes or exterior with artificial lights and the scene is dark, your immediate response will be to go back and add as many as lights into the scene. Drastically increases the time, it messes up. The lights you have placed are real world lights. And if a bedroom needs to have just 4 linear lights, that's it. I cannot put 50 linear lights inside just to brighten up the scene. Just go and work out on your post processing. Or probably, because RevIT is all about real world stuff. Okay. So go back to your adjust exposure, slightly increase the exposure a little bit and check whether it is working out. There you go. Maybe my exposure is very low. Maybe I could. That is a little bit too much. Of course, here I am losing the highlights, but it's okay. Just to show you. See, with just a click, I am changing the whole scene and it could be a little bit warmer as well. It's fine. So if I miss this, I am going back to the scene, I am going to move lights, add lights. Or another case, you select a luminaire, edit the family and increase its lighting intensity. 100 watts, you are going to put 2000 watts into the bedroom just because your room has to illuminate. Which is unrealistic. So be very realistic. Place exactly what you want. Mostly for ceiling lights, I always prefer reflected ceiling. Have you done that? See, placing lights on the walls and floors, it's fine. Have you tried placing ceiling lights? The best view to do that is the reflected ceiling plan. See, for example, I go to the ceiling plan, I go to the level 2. So in case if I want to place a few more lights, probably I'll go for placing a precise placement on the ceiling. So, and some of the luminaires, as you place, they're designed that way. You try some of the luminaires and for example, the street lightings which are supposed to be placed on top of a post, try to place it on the floor or a wall, it will not allow you. You have to move the mouse and it will be just effective unless it finds a flow. So certain luminaires, the families are designed that way which will not allow you to place in any other areas. A ceiling will allow you to place it only on a ceiling. It will not allow you to place it on a wall. Okay, so that's one tip, take care of that. So let us come back. So you need not take this too seriously, because these are just trial and error, and we are just arriving at the medium. But if you have enough time, please go ahead and push the values, and most of the people copy the medium settings, a predefined setting, and then go and tweak it to start from medium and go further ahead. But all right, so the same thing, draft 9 seconds, the same model which I showed you, medium 46 seconds. Now take a look at this. The draft with anti-aliasing pumped up to 8. Anti-aliasing is the one which are going to remove this jagged edges. I did this in front of you. Remember that? I copied draft and pumped up only anti-aliasing, which looks better than medium. Which now the medium with anti-aliasing set to 8. Okay, 5 minutes. We are all talking about 4-5 minutes of renderings. Okay. Now that's a custom mode. I'll just skip this because that's fine. Now, okay. This is a custom setting where I have pumped up all the values as per the image, okay, and I result in this interior scene. Now what's happening, the default setting when I did this rendering was interior with sun. But look at the curtain wall glass, it's completely reflective. It's not showing anything outside. You know the mistake which I did? Because my number of refraction is set to 0 here, okay. The maximum number of refraction is set to 0 by mistake. So my RevIT is not seeing through the glass. All right. So the same setting where I slightly pumped up the refraction to 3, it's allowing me to see through the curtain wall outside. But look at this, because there is 2 curtain wall glazing overlapping, where my refraction is supposed to be a minimum of 4 to pass through 4 glasses. So take care of this. Sometimes these complaints come. I do rendering, it's beautiful, but my glasses are opaque. Sometimes, yeah, it's transparent in some areas, it's opaque in some areas. Means you have overlapping transparent objects where you have to go and slightly tweak the refraction, not the reflection, refraction, allowing light to pass through. All right. Okay. So that's something. So you're looking at a 20 minutes of rendering. Now, blotchiness complaint. Many people say that I do a rendering, but my image looks like this. Wall is completely, it looks patchy. This happens in RevIT because of lots of bounces. If you're looking at products like 3ds Max and Maya, you have separate controls for this. This is all about controlling the photon emissions and final gathering. But in RevIT, the whole idea of RevIT is not to keep the architect in peace with the peace of mind. Like you should not worry about too many dialog boxes. So they are giving you simple controls. Okay. So one way to avoid this is to slightly pump up the indirect illumination smoothness. But definitely it's going to increase the time, but it's worth it. I am talking about 30 minutes to 1 hour of renderings. The current image is, I have set an anti-aliasing of 8, blurred reflection precision is 5, and soft shadow is 6. Soft shadow is like, could you see this corner of the wall where the slab and wall meet? That's soft shadow, very soft shadows from the reflection. So that should not look pixelated. So that's the soft corner shadows inside the room should look light and neat. So you go for that shadow precision, increase it. Okay. So if you compare the both images, only the IIS, indirect illumination smoothness, is pumped up to 9, you get a nice image. That blotches are all removed from the wall. You're getting it? Okay. So sometimes to avoid the blotches, we try to tweak all the settings, you drag, all the reflection you increase, refraction you increase, everything increases, rendering time increases, but blotches are the same, and you go really, really mad. So who is the right guy to control this? Is this IIS, indirect illumination smoothness. And one more factor also affects this blotchiness. If you have enough light coming into the room, the blotches are minimum. So RevIT struggles where light is not enough, because that corner of the room where light is less, blotches are about to appear. So if I can, particularly if I'm rendering interior scenes and I want to pull more light inside, one option is to enable daylight portals. Particularly this is very helpful for interior scenes where sunlight is coming in, no artificial lights. The trick is, I'll talk about that. So I'll talk about that in a short time. So this is a few more samples of the same room which I rendered, best, medium. So look at that. Medium with indirect illumination smoothness set to 10 drastically increases the time more than the best setting. Are you getting the point? So initially what I said, all the settings, draft, low, medium, these are all comparative, not definitive values. Sometimes a medium with a small tweaking can take more time than draft, than best. So take care of that. So again, well-lit scenes can reduce blotchiness. Now, what do I mean by well-lit scenes? Let's look at that. Well-lit scenes, more sunlight is coming in. Okay, play around with the sunlight value. You know how to set the sun settings, right? So, in case if I go for a interior scene like that, I'll switch on the let me switch off the section box. Not required at the moment. Okay. Now I'll switch on the shadows. Okay, shadows on to 260 or something. Play around with that and see if you can pump in more sunlight, See, you're going to produce an interior scene where enough sunlight is coming in, so take care that enough sunlight is coming in. So that rendering time is also fast, because RevIT has to spend less time in removing the blotches. Once the light is there, blotches are less. So blotches happens where there is no enough light. So particularly when you're rendering interior scenes with sunlight coming in, get nice lighting inside. In rare cases, even if you give a proper sunlight coming through your curtain wall glazing into the room, still the room might look little dark. Then you go back to your post-processing and increase the exposure. Still it's dark. In the sense, what you can do, you can go for enabling daylight portals. Do it only as the last option, because what I'm going to talk about now is going to drastically increase the rendering time. So when you go to rendering, and always go for custom. It's available only when you go for editing, okay? Only when you go for editing. If you drag all the way down, you have 3 controls: windows, doors and curtain walls. If you enable this, these windows are the window glasses, door glasses, they are going to pull in more sunlight. They are going to act as glowing objects which will pull more light into the room. But they are going to drastically increase time. Keep it as a last option. Always you have post-processing. Don't forget, any rendering you do in RevIT, interior, out of the 6 lighting schemes, any rendering you do, if something goes wrong, look at that one of the exterior night lighting was totally dark, but which I corrected in a few seconds by adjusting the exposure and the warmth. So always post-processing. If you fail with post-processing, still the image is not right, then come back and try all these tweakings and pulling in this. No, never ever enable this. Sometimes you think, when you started rendering, you might have think, okay, let me go and enable all this which is going to improve my rendering. Never. It can actually spoil your rendering and also your rendering time. So always this dialog box, be careful. Sliding everything to the right and switching on everything doesn't always mean you are going to get the best image in the world. Not at all. Okay, only you will get the best rendering time. It's going to increase a lot. So play around very carefully, and it's simple to understand. It's actually RevIT is not asking you to remember huge stuff. It is just asking you to remember just 6 post-processing settings, easy to remember, and around 9 tweakings. That's it. Anyone can do. In a day you can learn this, unlike other graphic software where you need to master that. Too many dialog boxes itself is haywire. There is no one who had still mastered it even. So the next thing is like, okay, this is what I was talking about, the daylight. On the left side you see the normal renderings where you can see the splotchy look on the walls and stuff. So through the windows, so on the right side I have enabled daylight portals for windows, which is pulling in more light into the room so that the blotches are removed. The rendering time is also fast. So otherwise what I'll have to do, I'll have to come to this rendering and increase the indirect illumination smoothness, isn't it? That is one way to solve. But which is better? Pull out more light, or pulling out more light is faster than increasing the IIS value, because that will drastically increase the time. Now that's all about mental ray. In case if you want to try the ray tracer, there are differences between the ray tracer engine and the mental ray. Let me see if I can do that really quick. Ray tracer, if you choose, ray tracer is more physically based renderer. It's not going. Mental ray is more about design freedom of expression. You can go for bounces. You can show a beautiful. You can go for an overexposed architecture. You can play around. Ray trace is about it exactly renders what it is, what the material is about. It just renders and gives you. Okay. Have you seen that this ray tracer, when you go for the shading modes, you know all this, right? Wireframe, hidden, shaded, and always you avoided one guy, which was the ray trace mode, because each time you drag in the screen it renders. This is called as an interactive ray trace. But what I'm going to talk about is a different technology. You should not confuse the ray trace rendering engine with the ray trace shading mode. Ray trace shading mode is different. Ray trace rendering is different. But in case if you want, you have to enable ray trace, which will immediately give you live feedback on the screen. This was existing long back. But there are some advantages and disadvantages for ray trace, which I will talk about. If you enable, here I'm not rendering, I'm just enabling the ray trace shading mode. It will keep on going, the ray tracing will keep on continuing until satisfactory. But if you take a look at the ribbon on the top, you can stop it anytime. If you have time, allow RevIT to keep on working on it until it reaches a satisfactory amount of stuff. Of course, you can see the bounces are very less. Is that okay? Coming back, my idea is not to show you about the ray trace shading. Let me come back to the normal shading, but I'm going to render. I'm going to choose the Autodesk Ray Tracer. Of course, you have the same preset types. Of course, you don't see low here. It's draft, medium, high, best. Okay. For example, I go for a medium. Here also you can, but always one more thing. If you are using 2016 version RevIT, you will see only the Autodesk Ray Tracer and the presets. You will not see this custom or edit. If you have installed RevIT 2016 R2, if you are a subscription user, if you go to your subscription account, you have an installer where you can install the R2, RevIT R2. So it gives you all the features, which other users will have to wait till RevIT 2017 is released. But if you are a subscription user, install this, download this. It's a very small file size which will update RevIT 2016 to 2016 R2. In R2, you will have this custom controls for Ray Tracer. If you're using only 2016, you will not see this custom control, just the Ray Tracer. Okay. So what Ray Tracer does, of course, you can go for screen or printer, the same sunlighting. Another difference you will see in Ray Tracer is you are limited to only 3 backgrounds: sky, a color, or an image. Where the Mental Ray gave you cloudy conditions, right? Less cloudy, very cloudy, and all those stuff. Okay, that's it. Now there is another catch here, but compared to Mental Ray, one advantage of Ray Tracer is fast. For the given settings, for example, for the given medium, for the given settings, if you compare it side by side with the time Mental Ray takes, this guy is super fast. Once I see the scene, if it is like dull or dark, now immediately your mind goes for post-processing. Now the stuff with Mental Ray is, as you go to adjust exposure, I slightly increase it, you get and say apply, there is no apply button here, you get immediate visual feedback. With Ray Tracer, you have to have a blind adjustment of exposure and say okay and re-render. So Ray Tracer post-processing is not interactive, but it's super fast. Depending upon the situation, but Ray Tracer gives reproduces more faithful materials, because Mental Ray does lots of bounces. Because of these bounces, the original saturation of the materials you have applied will slightly bleach out. If you compare Mental Ray with Ray Tracer is very faithful to the material. It shows material exactly, saturated. Mental Ray will slightly bleach out. Did you see that slightly bleached out look? So that we tackled this by opening the image which is used inside the material editor in Photoshop and reducing the gamma value a little bit. So that I adjusted for the Mental Ray to render properly. That's a little bit too much for you, but just note it down. You need to go to the material editor, open the image which the material uses, open it in Photoshop and pump the maybe the gamma value from default 2 or 1 to 0.45 or something, so that it counteracts the bleaching effect of Mental Ray when too much of bounces are happening. For example, that's a dark blue table cover. If I do lots of Mental Ray renderings, that might go for a medium light blue or something like that. But Ray Trace will be very faithful. It exactly give you that dark blue. So to counteract the effect of this stuff in Mental Ray, we used to open up the image used by that material for that dark blue and reduce the gamma value, so that the resulting image shows you a faithful material. That's a workaround. So that's what you see on scene. It's super fast. The same quality of rendering, Mental Ray would have taken a little bit more time. The only issue with Ray Trace is post-processing. You have to render it again to see how it is working out. So that's medium quality. So I'll talk about that as well. So it's more physically based against artistic freedom and expressiveness. Mental Ray, I can pump up the values, adjust exposures, and good result at draft and medium. You need not really push it to best, or draft and medium itself is good. Can use more than 16 CPU cores, and it's very easy to use. Default settings, that's it. But the only cons is no interactive post-processing. You have to re-render and do all those stuff, and then and even the exposure value is blind. Very similar to professional cameras. In DSLR, what I do is blind exposure, right? Once I shoot a shot, if it's underexposed, I set an exposure value, shoot, not satisfied, change. Shoot, it is a blind exposure setting in real world. I don't look at the camera and fine-tune a scene live. So that's the reason professionals always shoot 6, +3 to -3, they always take 6 different exposures to fit in which is the best exposure. Alright, so that is one thing. Now alternatively, if you are a subscription user, your Autodesk licenses have, you can go and check back with your IT, you will have cloud credit points. It differs based on the licenses you have. These cloud credits can be used for various purposes. It can be used for doing a structural analysis in the cloud. It can be used for an energy analysis in the cloud. It can be also used for rendering in the cloud. What is the advantage of pushing into the cloud? That's 15 minutes. So the same scene, if I want to render it in the cloud, I go to view. I need to have an Autodesk 360 account. Okay. So I just say render in cloud, which opens up a dialog box. It's a 3-step process. So Autodesk is telling, RevIT is telling you step 1, step 2, step 3. So it is not going to copy the exact model and upload it to another website. Nothing to worry. It has its own technology in the background. It is going to take exactly the RevIT model in a format back to the cloud and then render it for you. So I say continue. So the render in cloud. Now carefully notice, everything I'm going to do from this point onwards, the power of my laptop is not at all used. My laptop is free. The rendering and whatever is going to happen, it's going to be done by a huge set of servers and hundreds of cores back in our Autodesk server area. So you choose which view you want to render. Okay, you choose it's a still image or an interactive panorama, or you want to do an illuminance. Don't worry, even if I choose still image now, later on I can log in into the cloud and do a stereo rendering or a 360 panorama easy. Now I'm going for a still, so standard or final, what quality you want. Exposure has to be native, as you have said here in RevIT, or the advanced exposure of the Autodesk render engine, because this rendering engine of the cloud is a completely different technology. It's not mental ray. I'm just pushing it there. Now what image format you want, JPEG, high quality, compressed. Based on the formats you select, it will tell you how many cloud points it is using. For example, if I'm going for a maximum, it will calculate and tell you that it is going to use 16 cloud credit points for this. If the cloud credit points got over, you can contact your local reseller or contact Autodesk to purchase more cloud points. It's very cheap, cheaper in the sense, if you compare it with the investment you are going to do it on the heavy hardware IT for rendering farm, it's nothing. Look at that, I'm having 81,000, almost 8 lakhs. I mean, look at that crowd, but I can keep on doing rendering for my whole life. I mean, because I own lots of licenses back in my office. Anyway, so I'm going for a large, and that's it. You'll have to just say, and you can also alternately say email me when it's complete and start rendering, and continue in background. All the dialog box will automatically minimize and you continue doing your job. That's it. Your machine power, IT, you can continue working in your model. Once the rendering is done in cloud, it's going to inform you. It's going to pop up a message, or you will get an email notification. Okay. When the email notification comes, email notification is going to look like that. 3D, everything is there. So these are some sample renderings, and this is the old one, not the one which I did just now. Now the beauty is, okay, here rendering is still in process. Okay, so let me open up this one, which is already done. Actually, this is a 360 panorama which I already completed. Okay, so you can do that. So this is live in the web, or sometimes I could pull this down. You can re-render it to something else, download it for offline usages. Okay, so if you want to see something which I already downloaded, it's just a HTML file like this. Okay, I open it in Google Chrome, and that's it. This took 10 minutes to render in the cloud, 10 to 12 minutes. So depending upon that. So you can go for a 360 panorama. My mission, to do this, there is no investment from my side on my IT hardware. No huge rendering farms, nothing. I push it to the cloud and relax. All right. So make use of the cloud if you're really, really busy. Of course, whatever I spoke about, mental ray, ray tracer, try to do it. But still, if you have cloud credits, why don't you use it? These are all rendered in cloud. All these renderings I'm showing you in this PowerPoint, Mac rendering to the second PC. You can also have your PCs fine-tuned for rendering performances and modeling performances. That technology is also available now. But for cloud rendering, you can just continue to work because cloud is taking care of it. Not only still images, you can go for 360 panorama, stereo pano, solar studies, you can render illuminance, turntable rendering options. Okay. You also have post-processing and exposure controls. Once the rendering is over, you can do the same thing what you did in RevIT. You can go and adjust the exposure. You can adjust the saturation, warmth, everything. Don't worry about that. So you might think of that, okay, I just push the rendering to the cloud, how it is going to look. you can still do the same post-processing. Probably if this completes, I'm not sure, I can show you how the post-processing is done. You have to just click on the image, pull down that arrow, it will give you all the post-processing options. I have to sign in again, sorry for that. I will get an email, but anyway, I'm just keeping this web page open so that once it's done, I can show you how it looks. All right, now for the benefits, you can concentrate on producing more renderings, trial and error. Once you render in cloud, because anyway your machine's power is not used, feel free to push more renderings and reduce the rendering time. Out of the best stuff is you will spend very little on the most expensive hardware for rendering once you start. Now this is one of the cloud features. Of course, if you go back and explore your subscription account, you will have credits for doing structural analysis in the cloud. You have cloud credits to do energy analysis, lots of things. Everything can happen. The future is cloud. Okay. And that's what rendering credits are required. Check back with your procurement or IT, like how many credits you have and how it is being shared as on a per user basis. And okay, now this is something which is the last stuff. You are an extremely busy architect where your deadline was yesterday, and you don't even have 10 minutes for RevIT to push that render button. What can you do? You don't want to do rendering, but still show some images to the client. So what can we do? So forget everything. Forget mental ray, just forget ray tracer, forget cloud. You want to just rush 5 minutes. You sip a coffee, take and print out something, copy and paste and go. What you can do? Make use of your shading modes. Okay. Now when you make use of your shading modes, it's not just shading. You can play around on your shading modes with some graphic display options, which I'm going to talk about. So already I showed you that ray tracer shading mode, which did not take much time. Did you notice that? Okay. This ray tracer shading mode. Now once you set your ray tracer shading mode, if you feel that certain things are not good, the sunlight, shadow, brightness, etc., always go to your graphics display dialog box. GD is a very famous command in RevIT, isn't it? GD. Let this be over. I'll stop this here. GD, graphics display options. Here you have manual, and always you can control it. Now this is not rendering. This is not rendering. This gets applied only to what is that on the viewport, which is just a shading. Okay, so once you do this, okay, now forget this ray tracer. Let me go for a realistic shading mode, just a realistic shading mode. Now I go for this graphics display. I go for photographic exposure, enable it. Okay, probably go for a manual control and slightly adjust it. Whatever you want, just fine tune it. Okay, you want to do certain color correction. They are all getting applied to the current shading mode on the screen. I'm not doing any rendering here. If you want to, be a little bit artistic, and enable the sketchy mode so that that should look like a small sketch. I'll increase the jitter, and normally for exterior, I say that a little bit of a sketchy mode kind of a look, and slightly increase your exposure value. Play around with that. This is happening in the graphics display options dialog box, not the rendering dialog box. Okay, be very careful. Now once done, play around with that. Shadows, and this is beautiful. You can show ambient shadows, which will add a little bit more realism. Can you see that? Some soft shadows are pumping up. Look behind the TV screen and all, Slightly it adds to the realism, see? Can you see that? Okay. Once that's done, and that's more than enough for you, some sketchy look, and you want to just take it into a PowerPoint and rush. Now how I'm going to take this out to a PowerPoint? I want to save this as an image outside. This is not, I'm not saying that what you see on the screen is it's a very nice stuff, but just I'm giving you the ways to do it. If you spend more time, you can tweak this with the proper, you can adjust warmth, there's lots of stuff, see? When you go for color correction, everything is there. White point, I can make it a little bit warmer, so that. Highlights should be reduced. Play around at your own time. It's the same setting which you saw in the render dialog box, but what's the difference? I am not doing any rendering now. I'm just adjusting the current shading mode on the screen. Beautiful. Now this is like when my deadline was yesterday. Okay, now I don't have any time to render. I do that. Now once done, what you can do is this particular view, right click and say save to project as image. You right click on this particular camera view, save to project as image, and give that, you can say for example AUX interior, something like that, some name. You want to fit to pixels, or you want to really a nice DPI for printing, just say zoom in, select the zoom in option so that you can select an image quality 300 pixel or something. Just play around with the other options. I'm not going to waste my time. If you want to hide links and all those stuff, just give a name, just give a DPI, raster image quality, say okay. So it goes and sits exactly under the renderings. Here it is. Okay. Now this can be dragged and dropped into any, I didn't do any rendering, just on the fly. Actually, you can copy your own camera view, right? You just copy a camera view and then give it a new name and then assign this filter. That's one tip. So try out the various shading modes. The sketchy option, particularly it's quite nice for exteriors, particularly even for this one, the sketchy mode, when you go to graphics display, always remember graphics display dialog box is different, rendering dialog box is different. Don't confuse with the options which you get in graphics display and rendering. Whatever you set in graphics display applies only to the viewport, okay? So here if you go for sketchy lines, enable sketchy lines and go for that artistic look. A little bit of a sketchy look and then enable shadows, and you can even adjust the intensity of your shadows and all those stuff. When you go to lighting, play around with the shadow intensity if you want to lighten it. I mean the ray traced sharp shadows if you want to lighten it so that the ambient shadows shows up, or if you want to increase the sharp shadows of the sun, play around. This is happening live in your viewport, no rendering. This is the last weapon you have if you are already out of time. Alright, so RevIT gives you every option. Architects with little time, with enough time, with more time. Okay, so that's it. So enable ambient shadows for a quick stunning visuals with those soft shadows popping up in all the corners beautifully. And tweak the exposure control and shadow option. Don't just enable the various shading modes. Go back to the graphic display dialog box. GD is the shortcut, GD. Graphics display options, and fine tune your shadow, the level of shadows you want, get into lighting, get into exposure control, get into color corrections, adjust warm, so that what you have on the viewport looks nice and good enough so that there is no need for any rendering. That's from one of the user from the forum. There are lots of renderings. He's one of the user in the Autodesk. So thanks a lot. So if you have questions, I have my email ID. Feel free to shoot emails to me. Hope you enjoyed the class. Thanks a lot. Thank you.